We are at Gigantica in France for a couple of purposes. Firstly, to case out this swim. This is called Big Girls because the big girls get in here from time to time, and we're looking to make an underwater film here at some point in the future, and being in a corner like this is an obvious place to be to get fish traffic during the day. It's so important to have fish feeding in front of the camera during the day, so a lot of the open water swims are just not even worth looking at. The other thing is the bottom of the lake. Out in the lake it's quite soft. As soon as the fish start feeding, it will cloud up and you won't see anything. Here, off that marginal shelf there, because I've scuba dived it a little bit out there, you've got like a nice firm sand. So it comes down gravelly and you've got firm sand at the bottom, and the fish do hug that, what we call the Euro tree line over there. They do hug that margin as they come in and out of the bay. So that's the sort of task number one. Now, priority number two, and it's probably the more difficult one of the two to achieve, is we're trying to get some fertilised fish eggs in the nursery ponds that we've created at the top of the lake. What we're looking to do, rather than bringing fish in from outside, which could potentially put something in here that these fish can't deal with and end up wiping out an amazing stock of fish, we want to grow fish on from spawn of fish that are actually in the lake. So nothing goes off site, we get fertilised eggs, we put them in a nursery pond, we grow them to a certain size, put them in a bigger stock pond, and eventually get them to probably, I don't know, 15 to 20 pounds, and then they go back in the main lake, and then there's no risk then of contamination from anything like a parasite or bacteria or disease or something. So I've brought Scotty over with me, part man, part fish. You know, he lectures in fisheries and in fish farming. He's a fish farmer himself, sells thousands of carp all over the UK, and obviously a fantastic carp angler at the same time. I've brought him here this year. We're sort of hedging our bets. If we catch a few fish, then hopefully they'll be the right ones to use for fertilising the eggs ourselves. If we get evidence of the fish spawning, then maybe we'll be able to collect them just in a natural state. So what I'm going to do now is pass you over to Scotty, because he was supposed to go in oblivion next to me. One, so we could have a little bit of a social, but two, because the fish use this bank as well just before they spawn. But the fish sort of told him to fish somewhere else, so he's moved round to the other side. So I'll pass you over to him now, and he can give you the story of the start of his session.
When I'm sat downswim looking down the lake towards the beach area of the lake, I see a massive fish come out and go down, and I'm thinking, well, I've only been here 10 minutes, it can't be as easy as this. And then another one. I said to Mike, you have a look down there, it looks like there's a few fish showing down there. And within a few minutes we'd seen another one and another one. So I shot round to the beach swim, sat in the beach for maybe 5 minutes, and I'd seen 10 shows. So I got my kit set up in the beach swim, and my God, my pulse was going at 10 to the dozen. There were huge fish just crashing out one after another, real close in. Within 2 rod lengths of the front of the swim, I see a monstrous fish come up. Got 3 baits out into the area, not fishing far out, felt incredibly confident. Then the line bites started, one after another, and by 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning I had no sleep at all. The bobbins wouldn't sit still. It was beep, 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 beep. They were pulling up so tight, the stows were dropping off. Oh my God, my heart, you'd rush down to the rods, nothing on. I was just thinking, oh God, this can't carry on for too long. At that point, I hear a bit of a splashing noise out on the surface to the left of the swim, and I have a look, and there's a common right up on the surface, and she's clearly got male fish chasing her and hassling her, and it looked to me for the world like they were spawning. To have that level of activity, fish on top of me, all these line bites and not get a bite, it was obvious that something else was going on. It's incredibly unusual for carp to spawn in 20 foot of water, but maybe that was what was happening, so I decided it was time to reel in. So I pick up my left-hand rod, start winding in, reeling in, reeling in. As it's coming in, as I'm looking down the line, old droplets of water running down the 20-pound sub line, thinking, yeah, looks all right. And then I think, hang on, what's that coming down the line? And that's that. And all of a sudden I noticed that the line is just literally dotted with carp eggs towards the end tackle. And of course, around the lead is a big old ball of weed. And that ball of weed is absolutely stuffed with carp spawn. So it's clear what's been going on. The fish have been spawning all over me all night long in 20 foot of water right on the bottom. And I'm guessing that the shows that we're seeing on the surface are fish just maybe, you know, coming up to equilibrize their swim bladders, get themselves balanced up again before they have another charge about. But the weed in this swim was just stuffed with carp eggs. I mean, on this bit here, and it'd be difficult to see it on this camera, but there are hundreds of eggs on that bit of weed. Gave Dan a ring. Dan, my swim is full of carp spawn. You wanted carp eggs? I'll give you carp eggs. So Dan comes round, brings one of the old weed rakes, chucked it out a few times, and every time the weed came in it was thick with eggs. So we collected several bin loads of weed, which would have had hundreds of thousands of eggs on it, thousands and thousands, which we then went round to the facilities here at Gigantica, plugged in a microscope, checked the fertility, and you could see the eggs were fertile. Some of the older eggs, which may have been laid a couple of days ago, actually had little embryos twisting and turning inside them. The fresher eggs you could see were fertile, the cells were dividing beautifully, so we popped all those in the stock pond, and fingers crossed, the future of Gigantica is safe and sound. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as just chucking a few carp eggs in a pool and hoping that something hatches, because the reality is that they will hatch. The next stage, the onward phase from that, is very, very important to the survival of our little tiny carp fry. So when the eggs hatch, they spend maybe 24, 48 hours hanging about, not doing a great deal before they become free swimming. Once they're free swimming, they need food of the right size. So if it comes across a food item that's like that, when you've only got a mouth like that, he can't get his mouth around it, and so that food is not going to get eaten. So it's vitally important to provide them exactly the right size food, and to do that you add manure to the water, you get an algae bloom, and hopefully that will give you some rotifers. And rotifers are tiny little freshwater food items that are essential for the natural feeding of a carp. In a lake like Gigantica, which is very deep and very clear, although you might get Daphnia in the water, it's very unlikely that you're going to get any rotifers, and those rotifers would need to be in the lake at exactly the right time for the hatchlings as they come off and start feeding. So hopefully in the fry pond we can create that. So we've added manure, we've got a rotifer bloom, there's an algae bloom, and the rotifers are eating the algae bloom. And by not introducing too many fish, hopefully there should be enough food in those ponds for the tiny fry. And God willing, they should grow at a hell of a rate. So those fish then obviously very vulnerable to predators as well, so at some point in the future they're going to need a predator net put over the top to stop the kingfishers and the herons eating them. I think the way to see it is that if you're a carp, everything eats you from the moment you're laid as an egg right through to the point you're 5 pounds. Once you get to 5 pounds and beyond, with the exception of otters, life becomes a little bit easier. So what I've done this morning is I've collected a bit more spawn. I cast the rake around a few times and dragged in a bit more, because I felt that if there were new fish in the area spawning, there'd be different fish to those that were spawning yesterday. Normally a female carp will have her day, she'll spawn within a morning and then that's her done, although the males might spawn the day after that and the day after that with different females. So I felt that would give me an option for increasing the gene pool. I've collected some more eggs, so again we've got a nice load of weed, and the weed again this morning absolutely covered in eggs, and you can see some of these eggs are fresh, only been laid this morning, and then there are others that have got embryos inside them now, so you've got eggs coming from different females. So I've done that, and I would expect the fishing to be a bit of a write-off now. I think we're going to reel in, because to be honest, when they're spawning, I don't want to catch a spawning fish. I don't particularly want to catch a fish that's just spawned and looks like a soggy blanket. So I'd rather leave these fish to it and enjoy themselves, and possibly go do some fishing elsewhere.
Well, one of the missions definitely accomplished. Who would have imagined that we would have arrived literally just as the fish were spawning? Scotty would have jumped in an area thinking he was going to be catching a load, only to find that his line's covered in eggs. We've managed to recover loads of eggs, spread them between the two nursery ponds, and the circle of life has been started. So hopefully in months and years to come we'll be able to show you the progress of those fish, and one day they'll be going back in here, hopefully upper doubles, maybe 20s, to grow on to 50, 60, 70 pounds at some point in the future. So that was the hardest bit really, and because we've accomplished that, I would say all in all it's mission accomplished. But from the point of view of the underwater filming, I'm not sure about this area. There's a lot of road noise. You can hear the trucks and everything coming past all the time, which makes filming very problematic. Clearly the way the weed has grown in different parts of the lake, there's not as much weed in this bay as there used to be, and they used to basically spawn up under the roots there when there was no weed around. So that's changed everything, and it doesn't guarantee that this part of the lake's going to have loads of fish in it in the lead up to spawning. So, you know, although we haven't caught anything, you know, we've learned a hell of a lot, and we've probably got enough information to decide that this probably isn't the area to make the underwater film. There are a couple of other swims I've got my eye on that are close to snaggy areas. We've tried the tree line in the past, it just didn't work. The fish stayed in the trees, they wouldn't go to the bottom of the shelf. But the other area I'm thinking of, which is a swim called the Stink and another one called Big Southerly, they sort of converge into a snaggy area that's in between both swims. The whole lot of the lake there is much shallower, so where probably it's typically 23, 24 foot out there, this bay is shallower, 15, 16, down there is shallower as well. With all those snags present, it does get constant traffic of fish. So we've learned what we needed to know, we've got fish in the stock pond, mission accomplished.